Hello, Florida Parking and Transportation Association. This is Julie Dixon with Dixon Resources Unlimited. I'm joined by my colleague, Allison, and we are very pleased today to introduce Christian Doolin with the City of Tallahassee, the Director of Strategy. You might recall that at our last conference, we co-presented and talked about One City's journey to implementing a parking action plan. And we thought what a great opportunity to ask the city to join us and talk about basically what happened next after the conference. Obviously, it's been an interesting year with COVID, and we thought what a tremendous opportunity to hear from Christian and to share the city's story. So with that, Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and really, really great to be back again. This association has been crucial to a lot of wins that we've been able to have in recent years. As you can see, "Parking is Never Finished" is the title for this session, and the focus is really going to be on what we started to do before COVID and continued, and as well as the twist of the pandemic. With the greater lesson that we all know, and many of you know, is that the hard work of building sustainable programs just continuous. My background, Christian Doolin, I'm obviously with the City of Tallahassee. I'm newer to local government, and in a prior life was in consulting and investment banking abroad, then in DC, and then in Florida, where I born and raised in Tallahassee, left, and then came back. My day job is the city's strategy director and managing the strategic plan and our targets and dashboards there. A few years ago, I was tasked by the city leadership to manage "quote unquote" parking. And at the time, what was literally transitioned to me was in the real estate department, our meters and our garages. And my first act was to Google Florida Parking Conference. And I went to Jacksonville and met many of you and got involved in the association, as well as meeting the keynote in Jacksonville, Julie, and we put together the parking plan. And I quickly realized it was much more than managing some real estate. So as a quick, if we go to the next slide, a little bit about the size and shape of Tallahassee. We are a population of roughly 200,000 folks. We're a full service municipality, which, just to unpack that, we have municipal utilities, gas, sewer, electric, water. There's a Tallahassee Police Department, the fire department, as well as the airport. It's kind of a very large suite of services that we focus on, and we are a regional hub in the Panhandle. So, we are a full service municipality in every way. We have 3 parking garages, 2 that are roughly at least 20 to 25 years old or older. And then a new one that's coming online. We're very excited about it within a month, I would say. And then roughly size and shape, again, about 1,100 parking meters. And the program itself has historically been decentralized, which I've kind of hit on, but we are recently really managing it like a program. So kind of taking it away from the 6 or 7 different silos and then kind of looking at how all these things work together. And that's really a function of what I talked about last year of having a parking program. If we could go to the next slide. So as far as our current operations and kind of managing to the future, I mentioned we're a municipal utility, and part of that is, for us, means we have consolidated our customer experience with our utilities to one call, one touch, one voice. And recently, within a year or so, around the time of I was presenting last year, we decided to take a direction to fold parking into that approach. Previously, parking was kind of just managed outside of the scope of that effort. So we have begun to fold that into our customer operations department and kind of moved and realigned a lot of the different functions and resources into one department. So in that customer operations department, we already had adjudication. We had meter bagging requests, but then we took enforcement out of our policing function and realigned it into customer service, as well as meter maintenance from real estate, and even payments from the treasurer clerk. All of these functions have been slowly coming together in one department where they can be managed. Now, we don't have a parking department per se, but we certainly functionally have become much more streamlined and managed collaboratively and together than in prior years. We additionally have brought our parking operations and garage management in-house, and that happened right before the pandemic. And I'll kind of dive into a little story here. It's been an incredible learning experience and a big transition, and an impactful one that we have been excited to do. So we've, around the time I was presenting last year, we were working in close coordination with our partner, Republic Parking, who had been managing our garages for more than a couple decades, and they still manage our airport. They have a separate contract for our airport surface lot management. We brought that in-house, and that involved a big management and realignment of our people. We had had about 5 different managers in that operation over the last 7 years, and the gaps between those transitions had become very significant. So we really looked to bring that in-house, and we involved all the staff of the existing team. They were either brought on as part-time employees or hired through they were realigned to a temp agency and then hired temp. And we worked closely with them to manage that transition over the next 6 to 8 months that went into COVID. Many of the folks in that garage had never built a resume before. There was a lot of capacity building we did to manage the prior staff as they transitioned into supporting us. And then over time, we kind of either found opportunities in our garage or elsewhere in our city, or the temp agency also found those folks that had been working in the garage. At the same time, we brought on the Republic's garage manager. We worked closely with Republic, and so their garage manager that had been there for about 1.5 years is now our garage manager, and he's a city employee. And the other thing we really did is we kind of made the office and the facility, we renovated it in a way that it became a downtown service hub for our operations, including our parking ambassadors. And so really there's been a cultural transformation in our shop, and it's still ongoing in many ways, where we pulled together former enforcement from parking, from TPD, new parking ambassadors, as well as the garage staff. And there's an office there that we've totally renovated and put in locker rooms and kind of flat screens. And there's a little mini meter shop in there, so our meter techs don't have to drive all the way outside of town to where the utility staging area is. It's really become a full service shop downtown. It's an amazing thing. How has that gone? I mean, I'd love to tell a little story here. At the same time we were doing this, we piled it on. We were installing flash parking at both garages. And prior to that, we at one of our garages, we had no gate control. Gates were open all day. Vendor attendants were sitting in the lane. It was pretty basic, and there was uncontrolled access to parking and removing spaces from paying customers, which is a no-no downtown. I mean, it's our highest pressure area. We installed flash, and at the same time, I think we made a big operational change, which was we had gates throughout that garage separating daily and monthly parkers. And that had kind of created a culture of kind of separation or ownership of specific spaces. And after kind of looking at what that was causing, we realized that there would be, right during Florida session of the legislature, there'd be dozens, if not, more spaces open, and people circling the streets downtown. And we had just these we had walled off capacity in the monthly parking area. And so with this new technology, there wasn't really a need. We could manage that much more. And so we removed a lot of those gates and had everyone just kind of come in and out, so that we could continually assure that monthly parkers would have access and have a space, but we could manage that daily capacity and in effect creating more parking downtown. It was a big win, but it wasn't without a lot of customer reaction. Most was positive. Let me run through some things there. I mean, some things we heard is that they were excited to see that others can't freeload because, like I mentioned, the gate was open. And so no one, no paying customer likes to see other people coming and going right next to them. Many appreciated that they could park anywhere. So there were monthlies that were on walled off floors that could now park where the dailies would. And then there were daily parkers that could park elsewhere as well. So there was kind of an appreciation of new ability to choose spaces, enthusiastic about an increase in personal touch. We loaded up the lanes in addition with the new technology because we were changing lanes. We had more than just one person in the lane. We made sure we were dedicating 3 or 4 people there at the peak times. I mean, it was very high touch. There was a little bit of wariness as we rolled out that new technology. We had done a technology installation that didn't go well. We had issued cards for a new system, and we had to pivot in the middle of that and get a second new system. And one of the things we tried to do was avoid another card issuance, and we ported a lot of information over on the back end, but there were some hiccups, and those were resolved mostly proactively, but some were resolved right there in the lane. That was our main hiccup. And then there was a little bit of pressure on the exit time as people suddenly realized the daily parkers weren't just going to be held by a operator or a Republic technician while the monthlies got to go out. Now it was open, and there was a little bit of flow management that we were doing and new signage, but it did create in the first few days a little pressure on the exit time. Let's say and we got out in the lane, we timed it. It was roughly 60 seconds. I called, Julie to see how other municipalities are, and reached out to a couple others, how they manage these kinds of things. We just got out in the lane. We started timing it every day. It started getting down. And this was during our peak time during session. We got it down to maybe 10 seconds. That's waiting in the lane and transacting at the gate to get out. So we also had our parking ambassadors walking up and down the lanes, giving out water bottles on the higher pressure moments. This was before COVID, when that kind of thing was kind of an afterthought. I don't know if we do that now. The impact of this has been huge. We really only have 2 months of data initially because then COVID hit, but there was definitely a full deck. So like I said, we mentioned during session, highest pressure point of the day or the year downtown, we would have dozens, if not 100 open spaces. And now we were seeing those full, which is only a good thing. And, we're releasing some pressure on our downtown parking demand. The funniest externality of all this, I think, was a call I got from someone who expressed discontent that a monthly parker, that they now have to park next to the daily parkers. And the subtext of that is we're next to a county courthouse. And the monthly parker reminded me of the quote unquote kind of folks that visit the county courthouse on a daily basis. And I had to gently remind her I'm a public servant and I serve all of the public. And I was excited to be able to do that. But that is a high touch customer that often reaches out, which always appreciate the details she brings to my attention. One of the things we did in response to that pressure as well was once COVID hit, we installed a pay on foot machine in the main points of ingress egress to relieve some of the transacting in the lane. It wasn't inordinate, the amount of transactions in the lane that were happening, but that is just one more way that we're looking to relieve pressure. Back to this slide, I've dove down a rabbit hole on that implementation, but that really, everything else has been kind of happening in the context of COVID, and I'll run through that, but that was all on the rails and happening, kind of full speed ahead right as the pandemic hit. We were replacing our fleet, as you can see here, our fleet for enforcement. It's an all new electrical vehicles fleet. And I want to say it's one of the only fully EV enforcement fleets for parking across the country. I'm totally not sure about that, but I'm going to keep saying it until someone else says, hey, my EV fleet is, or my fleet is totally EV too. So I'm going to claim that. And another thing we did, you see here at the bottom, that COVID really influenced was an increase in citation fines and meter bags. So let me say a little bit about that. On the greater landscape, there was a conversation in our budget cycle of the pressures that we're all feeling as municipalities on our budgets due to the pandemic. And one of the things we looked to do was recover the full costs of the services we provide. And that was a broad conversation. It included looking at our parks and recreation fees. It included looking at our growth management fees. And so bundled in that broader conversation, we kind of looked at some things we could improve. Now, a lot of our rates are, they or have been certainly below comparables in the state. And it's been quite some time since we addressed them. We didn't jump on garage rates or monthly parking rates or meter rates. Those are, as we all know, those are kind of the bleeding edge of the pressure. So we wanted to maybe look at some other surgical areas, and we were very kind of intentional and deliberate to start with citations in meter bags. Why? For us, our citation fees were $10. So if for violating a meter, his citation was $10. And after 15 days, it'd go to 20. And after, I think, another week, it'd go to 30. And the only issue with that was our meter cost is $1 an hour. And with roughly a 10 or 11 hour window of payment downtown from 8 to 6. And so the cost of a ticket's the same cost as a meter all day. So what we'd had is downtown visitors, particularly during session, that would roll up at 7 or 8, park, and walk off, because it's going to be it's almost like a individual meter bag without any requests, and just kind of a retroactive. So the incentive was clearly off there. We did analysis of comparables in the state. Ultimately, we went with recommending some rates that are less. I think we're below the median, but now we're at we doubled it. So that increase in citation fines we were able to do, again, in the broader context of the pandemic impact on our budget. Meter bagging is a equally kind of outdated and funny story. In 1983, we went back and looked. The city manager had created a policy that the folks downtown that needed to bag a meter for construction or for whatever the permitted purposes were, the rate was $11 a day, and that was in 1983. Well, it was never changed and never revisited. And one of the odd coincidences is $11 a day, as I mentioned, as rates increased on the meter over time, it became about $11 a day. So then the conventional thinking about the rate, without digging into the history of it, was that, we should just, the meter bag should just be the cost of the meter, but it wasn't including the maintenance. It wasn't including the administrative fees or, all the other normal fees you would consider in setting a rate. So $11 a day. we reviewed our meter bag request for a year just to kind of see where would the pressure points be here. And we really determined that, and we kind of looked at the number of meter bags requests we have over the year, and we kind of determined we weren't necessarily going to increase the $11 a day just right now, and the timing and the headwinds. What we did do though is there was an equally weird element to our meter bagging rates. They were, as I mentioned, $11 a day, but you could also book a week for 40, and then you could book a month for 100. And so obviously the value of a spot never really goes down, but yet we were selling discounts and incentivizing long bookings of our spaces downtown. So we were able to kind of strike that requirement, or that offering, I should say, those rate packaging. And now it's just the $11 a day rate. We're still now kind of watching to see how that's shaking out. Obviously, during the pandemic, demand is hard to really gauge and get a baseline of the impact of that policy. And we're going to have our eye on that going forward to see, the removal of that huge incentive to book for a month, what that does to our parking spaces downtown. If we could go to the next slide. So really, meters are kind of, in terms of technology focus, they really are the future for us. I mean, we've done garage tech, we upgraded our handhelds, which I'll get to, for enforcement. We've developed we now have a citation and adjudication portal, and really meters have been, as you can see here are meters. They're the older McKay meters, coin. And right when I kind of was asked by city management to take over, I kind of was looking at where to channel the precious resources and capital I had. And there was the staff had been preparing a park mobile rollout. So we've been heavily relying on that to relieve pressure for credit card demand. And it's been to a pretty great success. I think we have about a 51% adoption of mobile across payment methods. But we still have these older coin meters. And when I say it's the meters are kind of the future, we'll be looking to leverage some of these great national co-ops, which many providers are on now, and available to municipalities. And I think we'll probably, instead of a big bang, huge deployment to change everything, we'll just kind of follow demand, whether that's net new demand in newly developed entertainment corridors, or kind of block by block in high demand areas that have the old meters. We're just going to maybe try to get into that kind of an upgrade over time. And the reason we're able to do that is the changes we've made in our first year and second year while they've been really focused on the customer experience and creating more supply to meet the demand, and they've been successful there, they've had the great externality also of creating new revenue streams, and we'll be able to reinvest and maybe make some of these surgical upgrades as we go. If we can go to the next slide. So for off-street, as I mentioned, this began as kind of, hey, Christian, you're going to be taking over our meter spaces and garages. And I've learned it's much, much, much more than that. Our program is so much more than that. And so we've shifted to that programmatic view. One big piece of that has been getting together a parking ambassador team, who are really the heart of our parking program. It's enforcement wrapped in customer and community service. I mentioned we pulled it away from TPD and into customer service. We kind of changed uniforms, gave new handhelds. They're also given umbrellas to help walk folks around. We give out ponchos in the rain, because as we all know, we live in a tropical climate. It's raining almost every day, and they become real neighborhood assets, kind of neighborhood and community assets that are able to welcome visitors and help people as necessary while out doing their route and making sure they're enforcing parking. Touchless payment has also been huge, as it is, I'm sure, with all of your programs. we continue to promote mobile. As I mentioned, we have 51% adoption in the city and higher than that in our high demand areas. We also deployed a flash module in our garages where it's contactless. You can kind of wave a hand and it'll spit a ticket without having to touch the machine. So we've been really focused on making those little tiny upgrades where we can as needed and as we get that customer feedback. Allison, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. On enforcement, we've undergone, as I mentioned, a shift from kind of what was an only Tallahassee Police Department parking enforcement technician approach. They call themselves, I never would, they call themselves pet officers. I don't call them that. I wouldn't want to be called that. But that was our past team for enforcement. We created a parallel team for our high pressure entertainment districts that were going late into the evening. And those are our parking ambassadors. And at this time last year, that was the ambassadors were new. Now they're a full fixture in our community, and I'm going to get into some of the things they've been up to during COVID, which have been really helpful to have this group of ambassadors to lean on. It really is now a full team. They all work out of the downtown office in one of our garages. As I mentioned, we were able to get a really great space and kind of repurpose it into a downtown hub. We're also rotating routes among them. We have new uniforms and they're color coded each day. We've deployed new tech handhelds with data ticket recently. And so, and then there's the EV charging station. So the esprit de corps is really high. It's great. Everyone's really jazzed. In fact, some community officer positions opened up in PD, and we assumed some of our enforcement technicians that had come from there would return to PD, and not one of them applied for those community officer positions, because I think they're just really enjoying the vibe and the culture we've been building in our parking enforcement. If we can go to the next slide, I just mentioned we have deployed new handhelds, and those are attached to obviously our citation and adjudication system, which we've just deployed with data ticket. And I think one of the biggest Scooby-Doo rut-row moments for me since working with this program was when Julie and her team and we were kind of touring the departments in advance of getting our parking program and roadmap together. And we were in customer ops, and they were talking about how the PD was upgrading their handhelds, but there had been no communication between the two. And customer ops was completely disconnected. They're working on an old access database managed by a vendor that we had no contract with anymore. We couldn't find the contract. And for our customers, they were having to wait 24 hours after being issued a ticket. So the enforcement officers would go dock their handhelds, and that would go back to one provider, and then it'd be ported over in a table to the other. And it was just a broken process. And we have automated the vast majority of that process now. It's been very quick. And we have a team of adjudicators or folks, about 4 or 5 of them in customer ops, who had been reviewing cases. And I think this has just transformed their lives with the amount of time they've gotten back. And then they're focused on other services, and some internal to our utilities and customers of our utilities. So that's been a great gain for us. We are able to also do that swiftly because of the pricing on a per citation basis, working with data ticket, which has been really great because it's been less capital intensive to stand up. Also now when we get our, monthly proverbial outreach to the mayor about, hey, I got this ticket and this happened. We've been able to decipher those cryptic emails that kind of dance around facts really quick now. I can get a call into to my colleagues in customer ops and say, hey, can you look up this name or this situation? And then we have it all there within a couple minutes. It's just fantastic and can't say enough. That might be droll for many of you who are operating in modern times, but for us, we've leapt decades into the future, and it's been a really, really great experience so far for us, for our and most importantly for our residents and visitors. Although I can't really say they're happy to be paying parking tickets, but they can only appreciate the new approach. If we could go to the next slide. Regarding entertainment districts, I've mentioned these a few times. This has been interesting, and I'm not sure if my predecessor really intended this outcome, but this has been strategically maybe one of the most interesting evolutions in our program. So years ago, a developer in College Town next to FSU put a lease together with the city to lease 60 spaces in a high intensity action corridor in the development, where lots of students, lots of FSU fans during game day. I mean, it's just packed with commercial activity and residents. And they took that over. They managed the operations, the enforcement, everything about it. They extended hours. They changed rates. The private partner did. And at the end of that lease, we took it back over, which was one of the biggest needs, to create the parking ambassador team that could be there in the evenings, because our PD was really just enforcing during the day. And I think one of the kind of, in hindsight, one of the biggest things about reacquiring these spaces and having had a private operator implement a different rate and time model is we avoided a level of political pressure that I'm not sure as a municipality, whether the commission or the management or the staff would really be able to weather. I mean, there's so much political pressure on rate changes, and it was totally circumvented. And then it also created a new model that exists that's been proven out. So there's been at least one other area that's been developed, and they actively asked the city, please deploy the same enforcement and model you have in that entertainment district here. So it's been great. We kind of circumvented a lot of the stories of intensive community engagement and feedback, and maybe some of those headwinds. So that has been huge for us. If we kind of skip to the next slide, we'll kind of get into some of the changes during COVID. In addition to our program changes, our parking ambassadors have been really serving a very broad community purpose, and that's consistent with our customer ops. The idea in customer ops, I mean, they're usually serving multiple departments, multiple different kinds of customers, sewer, water, gas. Taking community calls. It's one touch, one call, one stop, one resolution. So our ambassadors are really no different. The commission put together a distribution program of masks early on, and the ambassadors were the ones that were delivering masks to residents or those requesting. Also, as we've opened back up our commission chamber and the hybrid model, we still have the WebEx, and encourage everyone as much as possible to attend our public meetings online. We have, kind of followed the state direction, and in recent months been holding the public meetings socially distanced with lots of protocols. But that's also we needed another level of service and just high touch there to make sure protocols were being followed, and just making sure everyone in the room was aware. And the ambassadors have been critical for that, and played a key role in our public hearings. So parking is now kind of flowing into the political realm in making sure these meetings are happening smoothly. And then we also formed what we would call, like, I think one of my colleague and the chief customer officer of the city, James Barnes, calls an attack team, where in our older garages, we were able to get some pressure washers and paint and just huge, we'd form, like, we've had a huge effort of multi-day, multi-week attack teams that would kind of go through a floor, go through an area, pressure wash it, paint it, restripe it, work with Parks and Recs to replant planters, and really just give the whole place, a beautification and another level of cleanliness. So the greater point here is during COVID, we've really haven't missed a beat. We've been able to close some of the gaps on old things we needed to get done, like the beautification of garages, but also repurpose and plug in as necessary. So the ambassadors truly are kind of a key asset for the government now. It's kind of hard to imagine we didn't have them even just a year ago. If we can go to the last slide, I was kind of thinking how I would first thank you all. Thank you all for your interest, and I'm indulging me, and certainly I'm excited to connect with you. I was thinking, like, how would I wrap all this up, and how would I characterize our program? And back in my consulting days on tech projects, there's an old adage for innovation: plan big, start small, fail fast, scale soon. And I think that is really a core character of what we're up to. I mean, we have planned big, we put the parking plan together, we have a roadmap, but we are starting small, lots of surgical changes. We're not waiting to for Athena to spring fully formed from the heel of Zeus. Change didn't arrive that way. Change accretes step by step, and we kind of do that, right? With whether it's hey, let's do the meter bag rate. Let's not do all our rates. Hey, let's change one lane in one garage and see how that goes and learn. Let's deploy mobile first. Let's not big bang our whole meter system. So we do start small, fail fast. Let me give you an example of that. I mean, going down to the one lane, we learned in that garage I mentioned, one exit lane versus kind of holding dailies and letting monthlies out first like a VIP. We learned quickly the pressure points there, and we were able to reconfigure staff, reconfigure technology with a pay on foot to relieve some of that pressure. So fail fast and scale soon. We have been learning so much, and we have that new garage coming online, and that we are going to be leaping over a lot of these learnings that we've been doing, and just starting with a great posture in the new garage. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
Christian, thank you so much. As expected, that was such tremendous information. I know other cities will really appreciate hearing from that, as well as the association members. I just really wanted to call out a couple of things that you spoke about and just really give you some kudos. Hearing some of the things that you did when it came to transitioning the staff with the garage. I mean, the resume support, everything that you talked about there. Again, I really had to recognize that. But something that really stood out to me, especially with the time that I spent in Tallahassee, was just that commitment to customer service. And I was wondering, I mean, I've heard so many stories and I've seen it myself. I was wondering if maybe you could just expand a little bit about that and how it's really tied into some of the things that you've done.
Sure. The customer service element and pulling it to that angle has just been a total transformation. I mean, one big indicator, I think historically, the executive director of our Downtown Improvement Authority is often letting us know issues, more or less issues to resolve in parking demand, because a lot of our merchants and downtown businesses are looking to make sure this is a viable place for 18 hours. And kind of slowly over the past year, we've gotten multiple kind of notes passing on kudos and praise from the folks, particularly downtown. And that's been a goal of the Downtown Improvement Authority, to the excitement or chagrin of folks involved in parking for years. And so, and that's kind of, at the higher level. And we have a countless number of stories just kind of on the customer service level of just happy resolution. I'll give you another example. There's a lot of journalists come downtown and park because there's a lot to cover at the Capitol. And, inevitably, odds are there are going to be, if you're coming downtown every day, there's going to be days where you miss the meter, something happens. And, with journalists, they can have a loud tweet. We'll get engaged, and most of those, our chief customer officer likes to say, look, when an issue happens, you can resolve it in a way that is better than it ever would have been had there been no issue. And we've been able to kind of execute on that a few times, to the point where kind of a look at this, I got a ticket tweet shortly thereafter was notes to the mayor and the city manager. This is a fantastic experience. So customer service is definitely the mantra of the program.
I appreciate that. And there was one other thing that you spoke about that, especially for our listeners, I had a moment of flashback when you talked about this, and it was a matter of communicating between the departments. I do recall that first meeting when we were in with the folks that actually processed the citations and the payments, and how surprised they were to learn about some of the technology changes that were coming without their consultation. And so I just really wanted to reaffirm that significance of making sure that we're talking to everybody and that we're not siloing the departments and having those conversations. And again, just really have to give you kudos, because it's just so exciting to watch what your program has become and what you've done even during a pandemic. So I just really had to acknowledge that and let you know just how exciting it is. And I was really appreciating the fact that you brought that up too, because that really was something that I experienced that, across the country in different cities, and it just really reiterated the significance of communicating between each other as well. So just wanted to let you know, thank you for mentioning that. But let me look at Allison and see if Allison, I think you might have had a question or two for Christian.
Yeah, we know the pandemic either slowed or completely stopped parking operations during COVID-19. Has the pandemic delayed any of your implementation projects?
In a lot of ways, not really. And I think that's for several reasons. We had a lot, as you can tell, kind of in the hopper as we were going in, and they were closing. So we had the Flash implementation, we had the data ticket implementation, we had some upgrades where Park Mobile and Flash are deploying the first instance of integration in the country here. So a lot of that was in the hopper. I think, as we all know, no parking program is the same. We have different history, different levels of competency, different citizens, different commissions. In our state, we all have the same governor, but that can be an element. So from where we are, we had nowhere to go but up. And we've been able to just kind of plug some of these gaps and it hasn't really slowed us down too much as a program. And I think looking forward, I did mention a kind of a technology area would be the meters that as we kind of have capital available, which, that may drag a little because we're in the general fund, we're not a special fund. So, but as that's available, we'll upgrade surgically. And I think that's really the focus. But also I think a big programmatic focus is we've closed so many gaps, like, connected silos, closed gaps, drop gates, whatever it is. And when you do that, you're establishing your baseline. Like, it's been hard to know what our real demand is when we're letting people park and walk. We're incentivizing people to park and walk, or book a meter for a month, or have an open gate. I mean, it's really hard to even know who we are. And I think that is a big focus for us now. Look, our demand really, it's hard to gauge right now, but that is the biggest question I have in the back of my mind is, we've done these things which we know will give us that baseline, and we'll probably be waiting on that just to see a return to the regular level, whatever regular is. But before we kind of keep taking huge changes, we really want to know now, where are we for real? Because it's kind of been Mayberry and more fuzzy in the past.
So if for those of you that don't know Christian, I have to tell you, every time I hear him speak, he puts a smile on my face because just the comparables that he brings in. I've never thought I'd be in a parking presentation and hear about Athena or Greek mythology. So thank you for that, Christian. But with that, what do you think? So we're here in the new year, it's 2021. Obviously, we're still dealing with some of the repercussions of COVID, but what's your biggest parking goal for Tallahassee and what's next, basically?
Yeah, I mean, our biggest parking goal, again, the mantra is always going to, I mean, it's kind of two things, but the mantra is always going to be like customer service. And I'll kind of unpack this with customer service. And then how do I create equitable access to public spaces? How do I make sure that's happening? So on the customer service level, we've been, we've done a few things. We've kind of been allowing, we've been in more of a warning posture in some areas than others. In 2021, I think we're seeing demand grow back. So we're graduating into this kind of more of a regular enforcement posture, but also, in some ways, again, it's not so different. I mean, we're FSU has been having games. We've had maybe some of our highest demand days in years this fall. So what's next in 2021, I would say, again, is really just making sure we, if we can, like I say, fail fast, scale soon. So like whatever we're doing, just make sure we're on it with a high level of customer service. So we're resolving it in a way that's better than it was before. I think that's really the focus. I think are in a good kind of pausing point. We had a 3-year roadmap and we front loaded things. And I'm so glad we did now, because now we're in a posture to kind of like pause, let us settle and see where we're at.
No, that's great. Yours is definitely a program to watch, and I couldn't be more proud to have been a part of it. I want to thank you for the time. We're actually right at the right time here to wrap up. I know you put your contact information. Is it okay for people to reach out to you if they have any questions?
Sure. I would love
That's
to.
terrific.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to the Florida Parking and Transportation Association. Christian, thank you to you. Allison, thank you for helping to coordinate. And if anybody has any questions, please reach out. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.